And welcome to this week's edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff De Forrest. Very happy to have you guys with us here on Bleacher Brothers. Toby producing today, and a very special guest. We felt the need, we felt compelled to do some kind of Super Bowl slash NFL 24-25 season postscript. And I'm thinking, well, who would be good on this sort of thing? And I couldn't think of anybody better, honestly, than one of our good friends over the years, many conversations applicably so, about both the Miami Dolphins. They used to cover basketball, boxing, all kinds of stuff. And now the esteemed columnist. I mean, we're talking Jim Murray, we're talking Eddie Pope, Bob Rubin, all of the greats, the esteemed columnist for the Miami Dolphins for the Sun Sentinel, and of course, well versed in all matters of NFL football, joins us on the program. Chris Perkins with us, although Chris, did you get arrested or something? You usually have a swimming pool in the background. A couple
Yeah,
of
you
bikini-clad
know,
babes are sashaying their way in the shot, and now you're in front of like a white wall, as if you were about to give testimony or something against some
this is like a hostage video,
yeah.
really. I mean, I've got people working at the house here, and so I thought it was going to get done later, and that things were going to work out, but they're done now. So that's the way it goes. Yeah.
All right, I would imagine you've been at many Super Bowls.
Yep.
My understanding is you were not at this one in New Orleans, which is a great place to catch a Super Bowl. Happens to be one of my favorite cities to visit anyway. And great location. 11th time they've had it there. Matchup was one that everybody thought was going to be extremely tight and hard to pick. Kansas City Chiefs going for the Pat Riley three-peat.
Yeah.
Philadelphia Eagles had been beaten in just tragic fashion. I mean, a catastrophic result. I was in Atlantic City 2 years ago when they had the original matchup there.
Yeah.
And this, of course, being a rematch separated by one season. But they were carrying the Eagle fans out in body bags from the casino there because, of course, AC is a big Philadelphia stronghold.
Yeah.
And I would say 95% of the people that were in the various casinos and sports books I visited had an interest in the Eagles. And naturally, the only people smiling at the end of the game were the bookmakers and me because I was in on Kansas City. This time, I don't know how you felt about the game. I'm thinking you were probably on the side of the Eagles based on the very simple fact that if you're analyzing football, I don't care if you got Greg Olson, Tom Brady, Charles Davis, any of the people that do this for a living as color analysts. The simplest approach is to say, wait a minute, offensive line, defensive line, I'm checking both boxes on the side of the Eagles. I think they're going to win a game. I don't know. How did you feel about it going in?
I went with the champs. I went with the three-peat. I went
Yeah.
with the team that had been doing it and doing it and doing it. And look, Kansas City, you could make the argument, right? They were not the best team in the AFC, right? You could make the argument Baltimore was better. You could make the argument that Buffalo was better. But Kansas City knows how to win. They know how to get it done. And that's kind of been the consistent theme, right? Under Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they know how to get it done. So, Depot, I went with the champs, and by halftime, I had sufficiently gotten my ass kicked here.
The
So,
Flowers were
just
in
like the,
front
just like the
early.
Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm inclined. I annoy a lot of people because when the first score is established and or maybe even we haven't gotten to that point yet, I'm already texting people it's over. And if they know what side that I'm backing, then they're thinking, "Hey, DeForest, you're an asshole." There's a long way to go in this ballgame, but you can almost tell. I mean, in the early back and forth that was taking place, even though the Eagles didn't score in that opening drive, they kind of got robbed. A lot of people felt on the pass interference call, which
Yep.
I didn't really begrudge the officials that one. He did push him in the face, which is
Right.
enough for me to
Twice.
say okay. But that notwithstanding, and then he made it up later on with a real bogus call against the Kansas City Chiefs. So
Right.
that kind of offset the two penalties there, both
Right.
being, in some people's opinion, outrageous. But and it turned out to be a non-factor, inconsequential. It wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
'Cause Philadelphia, I don't know that anybody expected the thoroughness of that beating. We've equated it to the clubbing of seals,
That's
and it really was of that variety, was
yeah.
it not?
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, the best team won. I don't think anybody can dispute that. And look, I'm happy for Vic Fangio because I thought that he did a really good job here with the Dolphins, and that the players kind of made it appear that Vic did not see this as as I guess, a two-way street. Which, let's face it, most teams don't see it as a two-way street. Mike McDaniel does, and we see his result. But I thought
I
Fangio
like
did a
you got
good
an early
job
shot in
with
there.
the players, and I thought that he didn't get along with Mike McDaniel. He said that it's just different in Philly. He didn't go into detail. He was too classy for that. But I'm happy for Vic Fangio. I'm happy for Philly. You know what? I would have been happy either way. But I'm happy for Philly. I'm happy that they were able to get the job done.
I like you got that right hand of the body. You're like Leo Santa Cruz, one of my favorite fighters. Always finished off combinations with a big left hook to the body. That was his final exclamation point. You already got a shot in at McDaniel, and we haven't even
That's
got
right.
near touching Dolphins as a topic yet on the show, which I'm sure we'll explore. Yeah, Fangio. I mean, there were a lot of things going on. The rhetoric among degenerates, and naturally, that was the conversation that I was following. Was which way are the betters going on this thing?
Right.
And they kept coming up with this trend that Fangio was 0-8 with teams going against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And many reasons. Another cliche, I think that also was certainly had some merit. What was never bet against Mahomes in these kind of spots, even though he had lost a Super Bowl. How many
Yeah.
times have we seen this guy literally, I mean, wriggle off the hook, whether you thought it was biased officiating or just pure blind luck, whatever it was? So many times he's manufactured a win, and that's what you're looking for. Being ignored at that point, though, was the fact that Jalen Hurts is a winning player. He's one of those guys you see in sports that may be unspectacular in any one aspect of the game. Is he the greatest thrower? No. Is he a great running quarterback? Not bad. But is he like Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson? I don't think so. Is he the sharpest guy out there? Does he seem to be in full command? Sort of, but he's a winning player. And if the two guys had walked up to the park, and you had your team together, and each side had to pick a quarterback, and you had first pick, is there any way that you could ever imagine that you would take Jalen Hurts, thinking he was going to outplay Mahomes that day?
No, and you know what, Defoe, and here's a message that I've preached yesterday and today, and I know it's not going to get through to anybody. This Super Bowl was not about the quarterbacks at all. Zero. This was
Turned out
about the
that way.
defenses. Josh Sweat should have got MVP. Not Jalen Hurts. I mean, Josh Sweat put all that pressure on Patrick Mahomes. They didn't even have to blitz. Like the defenses were the story here. And you can't sell defense though, right? It's easier to talk Mahomes and Jalen Hurts rather than 16 people, including Vic Fangio. Like nobody wants to hear that. People want to hear it boiled down to the strapping quarterback. And so that's kind of what you get. But I thought the story of this Super Bowl were the two defenses and, who was going to be able to control the game. Because, look, I keep hammering on this point, too. Kansas City won the Super Bowl last year with defense. This wasn't the same high scoring Tyreek Hill team that they had won with before. They won last year with defense. And this year, if you look at the two teams, if I'm not mistaken, Philly was number 2 in scoring defense at like 17.8 points per game, and KC was like number 4 at 19.2. In fact, Kansas City, the only time they scored more than 30 points this season was in that AFC Championship game against Buffalo, the 32-29. I think they had scored 30 like 2 other occasions. This was about defense, and I was I'm an old school run game defense guy. Defoe. I was happy to see Saquon eat this year. I was happy to see Derrick Henry eat this year. I wouldn't be mad at the Dolphins if they got Ashton Genty in the first round. I think the run game and the defense makes a difference nowadays if you don't have that superstar quarterback. And let's face it, there's only 4 superstar quarterbacks in the league, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you got Mahomes and you've got Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Burrow, and that's it. I mean, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, and everybody else just kind of interchanges. I'll say this also about Philly. I know I'm like running here, but I love the way that Philly and San Francisco, those are two organizations that I love the way that they're built. And I love to see their hard work and smarts get rewarded. And here's what I mean. Look at this recent incarnation of San Francisco. They've gone to the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick, Jimmy G, and Brock Purdy. And you look at this incarnation of the Eagles, they went with Nick Foles, Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts. And they won 2 out of those 3, Jalen
Yep.
Hurts and Nick Foles. So I like
Beating
that
Brady and
this Super
Mahomes.
Bowl was not all about the quarterback. It was about the team, specifically the defenses, more than the quarterbacks.
Yeah, we kind of saw that also because the discombobulation, they literally dissected Mahomes
Yep.
with a
Yep.
four-man rush. And some of the conversation that we had going into the game, which I thought was an astute piece of analysis, and it relates to this Vic Fangio 0-8 stat, which naturally that's not something that you can just take at surface and face value because who's he 0-8 with against
Right.
Mahomes? He's 0-8 with the Denver Broncos, who were starved to score points as their offense kind of caved in on them
Yep.
during the last few years that he was there. And I guess I don't know if he faced them during that one year. I don't think they played the Chiefs last year, the Miami Dolphins, but he was dealing with defenses that were constantly on the field and having to face this monster Mahomes, who's manufacturing plays out of his ass, snap after snap, and I guess just by staying with his basic defense that he used all year, he was able to contain Mahomes in the pocket. I mean, the pressure up the middle on this guy that's going to ruin anybody. I don't care if you have Mahomes back there. You could have Brady, and now a lot of people are bailing out Chris Perkins on Mahomes, saying, "Well, he can't be the greatest. He got clobbered there in the Super Bowl." But I don't know that you can ever make an equation. People always talk about the greatest of all time. If championships are your criteria, then Brady, I think, will hold this record forever. It's hard to imagine somebody winning 7 Super Bowls. Certainly not in my lifetime, maybe in yours, but even unlikely in that situation.
You know what? I think that Mahomes could be in that. He could win 7. He could. But I mean, that's a long way off, though. That's a long way off. But obviously, when you got 3 in your pocket and you're not 30.
He's got to at least make 4 more just to even have a shot, and that's no guarantee, right? I
No,
mean,
no, it's not. It's not. It's not. But I think that if he would have won this one, he would have done what no other quarterback has done, and what in the Super Bowl era anyway, and
yeah,
what no other team has done is get the 3 in a row. So that's a unique, distinguishing characteristic that even if you don't have as many titles as Brady, it can help your argument, right? I mean, look, Michael Jordan doesn't have as many titles as Bill Russell, and nobody's talking about Bill Russell as the
that's
as the
true,
best player of all time, right?
right? That's
So
true.
I mean, there are different ways you can approach it, and if Mahomes would have gotten 3 in a row. I'm not going to pay Pat Riley any money and force you to either. So if he would have got 3 in a row, that would have been a feather in his cap. If he would have maybe ended up with 5, you could say, yeah, but he won 3 in a row. You see what I'm saying? So but let me say this also. Saying that Mahomes is out of the conversation for the GOAT, come on. I'm not sure of the numbers off the top of my head, but I think 7 straight AFC championships,
Yes,
5 Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl titles, right, in a 8-year career or whatever it is. I mean, come on. Like, come on.
pretty
Let's be
amazing
real
resume.
here.
Well, I mean, I'm reading some stuff this morning, getting ready to do a show, and you would think that they had to completely revamp the entire roster of the Kansas City Chiefs, including maybe even looking at Mahomes, and that Andy Reid is more likely to eat himself into a Buster Douglas diabetic coma after the beating that he suffered here than he was to come back and make it to another Super Bowl. And just to touch on that a little bit, I mean, if you look at the other contenders who were there drafting in behind the Chiefs this year, certainly you could have made a case for either Buffalo or Baltimore to have dethroned the Chiefs and taken a shot at it. Who else in the AFC might be knocking on the door? I mean, how much competition will there be, or can the Chiefs just look at their roster and say, okay, you know what, if we run it back, we got a pretty good chance to be there again?
You know what? I mean, look, the Chiefs are smart enough to stay ahead of the curve, right? I mean, you do the 5-for-1 Tyreek Hill trade and you reel off 2 Super Bowls, right?
Yeah,
They got rid of. They lost L'Jarius Sneed, Pro Bowl cornerback, and they go back to the Super Bowl. I mean, these guys were 15-2 this year. You can say what you want about them not beating people 35-10 every week, but they did prove that they're better than Baltimore. They did prove they're better than Buffalo. Last year, they're able to go on the road and win playoff games, something that people had held against them. I'm not saying that, this is one of the great dynasties that we've seen in the Super Bowl era. And I'm not, going to say they're better than the Patriots by any stretch, but you got to give them their respect. So my point here is Kansas City is smart enough to know to stay ahead of the curve. In the AFC, to get back to your question, maybe Cincinnati comes back with Joe Burrow. Maybe Houston finds its footing with C.J. Stroud. But you've got to consider those big three are still going to be up there, right? Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore, and Jacksonville is going to have to find their footing. The Dolphins, we'll see what Pittsburgh is going to be able to do. Maybe Denver is able to improve a little bit. Bo Nix and that defense and Sean Payton. But I think the big three is the big three next season in the AFC, and we'll see what anybody else can pull off.
All right, so nothing necessarily. You mentioned a couple of teams. I guess Cincinnati had a really subpar year. Then they have to eventually, like a lot of teams. I mean, it's as simple as teams just solving their problems at the offensive line position, which we saw the exploitation of that by the four-man rush of the Philadelphia Eagles. What's the guy's name? The right tackle there, is it Taylor, the guy that's always executing or guilty of false starts? I think he led the league in those penalties for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they made the guy look like house shit out there. One more thing on the Super Bowl and the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles' narrative this year wasn't particularly pretty either. They had that just inexplicable collapse last year.
Right.
Where what did they lost like their last 10 games or something ridiculous like that. Sirianni is feeling more heat on his ass than Ed Ogeron did at any of his stops.
Right. He's yelling at fans.
Yeah, literally. I mean, he's sitting there on a Bunsen burner, and they go 2-2 to start the season and don't look particularly sharp in the process. And there were calls for Sirianni's head going on at the time. I mean, it was similar to Ryan Day after he lost to Michigan, where the team that ended up winning the championship, the ultimate prize, was being coached by a guy that was perceived to be a buffoon shortly before they actually got on their roll. And in this case, the roll did extend through the last, I guess they went 15-1 or something in their last 16 games that they played, including the games in the postseason. But I mean, what did you make of all of that? Is there a tangible
Loved it. I loved it, Defo. And look, there's stuff that we're leaving out, like AJ Brown reading a book on the sideline, right?
Yep.
I
have my copy of the Quran.
It was just such great drama. I'm glad that Philly was able to overcome all of this from the drama last season of their all the friction between Jalen Hurts and Sirianni and through it all they're able to get Saquon and this is a guy who could have gone for the single season rushing record, but they choose to sit him the last week. And he goes along with the program, right? He could have bitched and, hey, I want that record, but he was chill. He was like, I see the big picture. And so that's kind of what I like about Philly is that through all of this griping and these things, all of this drama, whether it's real or whether we, the media, created it, which I don't think the media has ever created drama. Have we, Defoe?
No, never.
I think
Marino wants to be traded. Exactly.
Yeah. So
I was there that day.
I was glad to see Philly overcome all of this drama. It was. I love drama. Drama is what helps us be relevant as media. I love to see Philly able to just put it all behind him and win the Super Bowl. That to me is a positive message. I try to do that in my life, Defoe. I'm trying to let Philly inspire me in my personal life.
It was pretty incredible. I mean, considering if you looked at the reaction that they were getting from fans and the media alike, there was a big mystery, and Sirianni couldn't have been any more close to toast. I mean, he was Elvis Toast Patterson. They were identifying this guy by dental records as he arrived at the stadium. And next thing you know, he's on this incredible run. He doesn't call his own plays. He talked about that in the weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, saying that there's enough to manage. And I know, we have to get to this also because I can't figure this guy out either. And your main beat is the Miami Dolphins. We're here in South Florida. Both of us are here. Bleacher Brothers is based in South Florida, so the Dolphins naturally are in focus, even though we're an international enterprise here at Bleacher Brothers. But one guy I can't figure out, and then you always want to look and see how far away is your team from being like the teams that just represented the two
Yeah.
conferences in the championship. And you would have to think that they're far, far away. If you were talking about the Miami Dolphins, not the least of which, in terms of components, everybody's down on Chris Greer. But how sold are you? And there were tremendous coaching changes during the offseason. I mean, it was as exciting and wide a coaching carousel as you could get with Belichick in the mix there. And, you end up getting Pete Carroll coming back to the
Yeah.
Raiders. Vrabel all of a sudden was Vince fucking Lombardi in the offseason. Everybody,
Exactly.
I got to call him. When did he become a great coach? I don't know. I mean, I hope he
Yeah.
does well. But and you had first year coaches like Mayo, Gerard Mayo, getting fired in their first year. Incredible. Maybe never to get another head coaching position again. And Bob Kraft, as if he was slinking out of that Asian spa in Jupiter and realizing, oh shit, that's the cops. Uh,
Workers of Asia.
yeah, I mean, he slinks away from the press conference saying, "Oh, well, I made a mistake. This guy's going to be great." But in the meantime, you lunched out a guy that you just hired and handpicked to be the successor to Belichick. It was crazy. But as you look at all of these different coaching changes, obviously going to have impact. Where does McDaniel stand in terms of his credibility with you?
Ah, he's Teflon. I mean, you know what I've said and written is that the thing that saved Mike McDaniel is giving Tua that
Excuse me.
contract extension. That if it wasn't for
Yeah.
that contract extension, Mike McDaniel would have been fired. Chris Greer would have been fired, and Tua would have been out the door if I was Steve Ross. And I had said that during the at this time last year, I wouldn't have given Tua the extension. I would have made him play the season on his fifth year option because of this. Because you didn't know if he was good enough to get you to the next level, and you didn't trust his health. But the way it is now, Defoe, Tua is there. He got the extension. If I'm Steve Ross, I'm thinking the person to get the most out of Tua is Mike McDaniel. I've pretty much got to keep Mike McDaniel
That's a
on a
real bad
1 year
marriage.
make good thing. And I know Mike McDaniel is going to fight for his guy, Chris Greer. So I'll just keep the peace. But there, to me, I would have gotten rid of all three of them, Tua, McDaniel, and Greer at the
Well,
end of the season because they've disappointed. They just haven't lived up to expectations. But the way it is now, if they don't deliver this season, Greer and McDaniel are gone. Tua, you're kind of stuck with Tua financially. I mean, you're married to him financially, but Greer and McDaniel, I mean, to me, you have to win a playoff game this year or you're gone. It's as simple as that. I've been very unimpressed with the job that both of them have done together.
when you're watching other guys on the sidelines, I mean, it seems like Sirianni's not even calling plays, and he's far more engaged in games than it seems like Mike McDaniel is. Now, I don't know. Well, people were thinking he was a clown, but I think he said a lot of the right things. I mean, it might have been pie in the sky, basic coaching philosophy, like we all got to love each other and play together, and it's one man up after the next. And, we don't worry about adversity. We stay focused. Has McDaniel? I mean, he seemed very interesting at first, but has that act kind of worn thin in terms of you were thinking, geez, just give me Dan Campbell taking a bite out of a live bear before he sends the field out there instead of all of this Nietzsche type stuff that McDaniel's been professing.
You know, Defoe, if you'll recall, I was like the villain when I came back to cover the beat in 2022,
Yeah,
Mike McDaniel's first year, because I didn't buy it. None of this made sense. It's not how you win in the NFL. And I picked that team to finish 8-9, and I was wondering if Tua could make the deep throws, and I became a pariah immediately. But none of this made sense
and
that all you're going to do is win with speed, speed, speed. You got no muscle. The player empowerment thing, all the off days, the easy practices. You're not running sprints. Like, Listen, it's Silicon Valley in the NFL, and I'm not sure the NFL is ready for that. It certainly is not how you win in this league, and so it never made sense to me, and it still doesn't make sense to me. And so every year that Mike McDaniel has been here, I've pleaded with him to change the offense. It's all about two things I've said: Tyreek Hill and the threat of Tyreek Hill, and the numbers back me up. That like Tyreek only had three 100-yard games last year. None of them were against playoff teams because the good teams know how to shut Tyreek down. 2 years ago, they were 8-0, the 2023 season, 8-0 when Tyreek had 100 yards or more, and what I think 2-7 when he didn't. And it was he never had a 100-yard game against a playoff team. Do you know, Defoe, that in the last 2 years, neither Tyreek Hill nor Jalen Waddle has a 100-yard receiving game against a playoff team?
Wow.
Because the defenses have figured out if we shut these guys down, that offense can't score. They've rushed for over 100 yards in each of the last four games against Buffalo, but neither Tyreek nor Jalen Waddle has a 100-yard game, and the Dolphins have lost because that offense is so simple. So they've got to change that offense. They've got to get some more muscle, a run game, a muscular, powerful workhorse running back, somebody who can do 15 to 18 carries per game. Their run game is bad in the red zone, bad in goal line, bad in short yardage, and bad on third down. Aside from that, it's a great run game.
Yeah.
They need Mike McDaniel has to diversify this offense. It's something he could learn from Philly, something he could learn from Buffalo, something he could learn from Baltimore. So, I mean, diversify your offense. It can't be all about one thing, and that one thing being Tyreek Hill. It just can't.
Yeah, he was looking so sharp in the very beginning when he put up the 70 on Denver. You thought, wow, this is great. But he looks more like Professor Irwin Corey as an educator now than he does, somebody that you're going to put the genius tag on, which a lot of people are ready to
I'll
do.
say this, Defoe. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll say this. Here's what I say about the Dolphins, and people don't really believe me on this. I think the perfect 2 week metaphor for the Dolphins is that 70-20 victory over Denver, and then the following week you go to Buffalo and get waxed
Yeah,
48-20.
right.
You run up scores on bad teams, and you get hammered by good teams, especially on the road. That back to back, and all everybody remembers is the 70 points. They don't remember that they went to Buffalo the following week and just got
Great.
just hammered. And that's the story of the Mike McDaniel era in a 2 week nutshell, right there.
Beautifully said. I'm sure he appreciates all of your articles and all your visible presence on streaming shows all over the place. You have your own podcast going through the Sun Sentinel, where you're espousing all of these things and telling the guy basically, listen, Mike, your fucking system can't work. And has he made mention of that to you?
No, he is not. But I get a snide look or a little jab every now and then. I think everybody knows where I stand on Mike McDaniel. And by the way, I say this honestly. I like Mike
Yeah, you
McDaniel
want
and
him to
Chris
win.
Greer, and I respect them.
Yeah.
But they have wasted talent. This has been the most disappointing era of Dolphins football to me ever.
8-9 is garbage. I mean,
It,
with what they had and the money
yeah,
they pulled out, on
right.
top of that, gave it away freely. Like anybody that showed up in Stephen Ross's office or Greer, ended up, hey, you want another couple of million? Here,
Right.
just sign this. Yeah, right. No, a voucher you're going to sign. It's great. People were
Right.
signing markers in there and going to the casinos, the Hard Rock, gambling their brains out. All right, I wanted to get into it. So I don't know that we have like one of the great new coaches with the Miami Dolphins. I'm using the we
Yep.
here in South Florida, but
Yep.
of these new coaches, all right. So who's going to be the most significant? Ben Johnson, highly talented. Everybody wanted him. They wanted him, for the last couple of years. He goes to the Bears. What kind of spot is that guy in?
A bad spot because you've got bad management. Like the Bears are poorly run, and so you don't really have a chance to win there. I know you've got Caleb Williams, but your management has to improve.
How did they blow? I mean, it seemed like they had a golden opportunity, though. They had Caleb Williams, and didn't they have like the most massive amount of draft capital that's ever been assembled by one team?
Yeah, yeah. But
From
you know
trading
what? I mean,
the
look,
previous year for the Bryce Young deal.
yeah, the Bears just have a long history of a long recent history, I'll say, of just not doing the right thing from management on down, and we'll see what Ryan Poles can do there, but I just don't really have a whole lot of faith in the Bears from the top down.
All right, and they kept the coach, right?
Yeah, yep, yep.
Well, no, they got Ben
Well,
Johnson.
no, they
Thinking
got
about.
Ben, yeah,
I was
yeah,
thinking about the Browns keeping the coach. Did they keep Stefanski?
yeah, yeah.
Can you explain that? I mean, and
Well,
which trade now looms as among the worst ever? I don't know that you can really. Can we pass a final judgment on the Bryce Young thing? He showed signs of life last year at the end of last year with Carolina. But Deshaun Watson deal or Aaron Rodgers, which was worse?
oh, it's Deshaun easily. Deshaun is going to be the worst ever. I mean, you can't give that guy that much. You can't give anybody that much money and then guarantee it's ridiculous. I mean, it's
And the
totally
trade itself,
that will endure as the worst ever.
right? The trade itself was abortive also. I mean, they sent like
Yeah,
five draft picks, high draft picks for Deshaun Watson, some players too. Rodgers also. I mean, that was quite a bounty they got for Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay, and the New York Jets are sending a lot of, I mean, assets there, and they got nothing out of this guy. What
yeah.
does he come
That's
back?
another job. Aaron Glenn, good luck. That's another job. That's just not a good job from management on down. It's you got a meddling owner. It's not. That's not a good job. I understand there's only 32 of them, but some of these that you take, if you're like a Steve Wilkes,
Yeah,
in Arizona, that was a bad job, and you're one and done, and you probably won't ever get another shot. So it's real buyer beware on these jobs. Brian Flores had a great job until he didn't, right? Until the owner is like, "Hey, I want you to tank, and I want you to take Tom Brady," and
how was that just brushed over? I mean, it was not
yeah,
brushed over like the NFL has made no comment about the halftime show at the Super Bowl.
right,
We have an official
exactly,
statement out. Excuse me for
yeah,
coughing my brains out during the show, but yeah,
yeah.
it's been a little bit of an adventure on that front. But yeah, I mean, you know,
Every job's not a good job.
what's that?
I said every job is not a good job. I know
Yeah,
that there's
no.
only 32 of them, but again,
Are
Flo
these
had a
guys
great
doomed?
job until it turned out that it wasn't a great job.
Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. I mean, they couldn't have gotten any more high praise. Everybody's talking about them as the second coming. Detroit Lions, even with Dan Campbell, who a lot of people wonder if he's actually coaching or if he's just there, as a motivational factor. Must be doing some kind of coaching. Do you think he gets involved in X's and O's? Because every year they take his coordinators, but he was right back there again.
Yeah,
And same thing with Sirianni. He loses his coordinators every year.
yeah, and you know what, Defo? I don't care if Dan Campbell is an X's and O's guy, because to me, it's one thing that I always said about college that is kind of true in the pros. In college, I always said you have to have a great X's and O's guy, and you have to have a guy that somebody will run through a brick wall for.
Okay.
And if you aren't one, you better have the other on your staff as a head coach. And that's kind of true in the NFL. You have to reach players in different ways, and one guy can't necessarily do it all the time. So eh, I'm not too hung up on Dan Campbell and is he a great X's and O's guy? The guy knows how to win. He knows how to reach players. And no, his strategy is not always the best. He takes gambles, but that's kind of his personality. That's kind of how he built his team. So, you get it done however you can get it done. By the way, I'll say
Yeah.
this: a name that I didn't think I was going to say today, Liam Cohen, right in
Yes.
Jacksonville. That's not a
You don't
terrible
think he's
job.
good? No.
I don't know about your new GM, but you do have an owner who is very supportive. You seem to have a quarterback. You might not. That might be a decent job. I know they sucked ass last year, but
Yeah.
that might not be a bad job. That's you. In saying it's a better job than the Jets. I'll say that.
It was a weird scenario too, because
Yes.
Cohen says, "Hey,
Oh God, that the
I don't get
most
along with
right.
the GM."
If you get rid of the GM, I'll take the job. Okay, come back.
He goes back to
Yeah,
Tampa, and
that
then
doesn't hit its stability, but hey,
that was kind of crazy. You don't usually see a first time head coach getting that kind of leverage,
yeah.
where he can, after the fact, get a GM who is being retained by the team go.
Right,
I mean,
right.
here's
Well,
the
there was
coach.
chatter about Trent Baalke, and people didn't want to work for him, and I know there were a couple of guys, at least one guy, and I can't remember who it was, who I believe withdrew or declined to interview, or withdrew or something like that. So yeah,
That
so
was, that
there
was
you
an
go.
interesting scenario. All right, so we got Ben Johnson doomed in Chicago. Vrabel in New England. I don't know how much of a difference can he make. We'll see.
Yeah,
They may not
we'll
be
see
as
what Drake May is about too.
the Liam Cohn goes to the Jaguars. Pete Carroll with the Raiders doesn't appear to have a whole lot to work with there, although I like Pete Carroll as a coach.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore, New Orleans, and you've got, as you said, Aaron Glenn going to the Jets. All new head coaches, all right? And of those, what are you thinking? You're thinking Liam Cohn might be the guy most likely to have success?
No, I'm saying that that's not a bad job. In the
Okay.
New Orleans, you're kind of in salary cap hell. So you need your front office to kind of help you get out. It might take a couple of years just so you can get enough talent to contend there. I'm just saying that in kind of looking at all of these jobs, it's not. It might not be a bad job. The Jets is a bad job.
Yeah.
Chicago is a bad job. New Orleans, borderline, but Jacksonville, I don't think is a bad job. That's as far as I'm going to go with it.
All right. What are going to be the major moves, the major stories of this offseason, in your opinion,
Oh
Chris?
God, I, boy, I
You got
have
you got
no idea. I
Rodgers.
mean, and look, I'm not going to count Aaron Rodgers as
Yeah,
a major story in the offseason. I know he's a
he's in
future
that
Hall of Fame
right.
quarterback.
He's in the active type. You see the
Yeah, I guess I
transaction.
probably do have to count him, don't I? I mean, he's one of the best. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I mean, if
I
he's a
guess I do
backup
have
with
to
the
count him.
Cardinals, yeah.
I just don't want to drag on with all of that. Um, Boy, and once we get past that, really, I think to me, it's going to be what to me one of the things I'm going to look for is what is Cincinnati going to do to take advantage of Joe Burrow in this prime time of his career. You don't have very long with some of these guys, right? You've got to capitalize. Buffalo is trying to do what it can. Baltimore is trying to do what it can. Kansas City is laughing at everybody. We'll see what Philadelphia. You don't have one of those elite guys, but in the big four, Joe Burrow needs the most help. Let's see. This league is about a lot about quarterback. Even though I maintained the last Super Bowl was about defense, it is a lot about quarterback. And we did see Lamar Jackson get Derrick Henry, and we saw Josh Allen lose Stephon Diggs, but he went into a phone booth and as Clark Kent, and he came out as Superman, and he wins the MVP, and he takes these guys to the championship. What is Cincinnati going to do for Joe Burrow? What's going to happen with Jamar Chase? To me, that's going to be a big storyline of the offseason. Something that I'm looking for anyway.
Is it as simple as making amends on the offensive line, and can that be done? Why is there? I mean, it's one of the reasons a good friend of ours believes that some of these ancillary leagues like the XFL, what is it now, USA
Yeah,
Football.
yeah, yeah.
The reason that their play is inferior is because they have no offensive linemen. That they have borderline players that could make an NFL roster, but offensive line. Why is it so hard to find some fat guys up front that can block?
I don't think that it is. I think that there's certain teams that just struggle with it for whatever reason. But look, we remember all those years that Dallas had the best offensive line ever, right, with Tony Romo, and it didn't do you any good. And so I think there are still lots of factors in winning. I don't think that there's any one set formula, whether it's the quarterback or the coach or the offensive line or the defense. You have to figure out what works best for you. And again, I go back to San Francisco and Philly, like neither one of them has won strictly because of offensive line or strictly because of quarterback or strictly because of defense or running back. They mix it up every year according to what that talent can do for them. And that's what I appreciate about those teams is that they're well balanced enough that they can kind of adjust. If for 2 straight years your offensive line is an A, that's great. You can take advantage. But then if you have some injuries and some free agent losses and you slip to a C+, well, you can still go to the playoffs and win a playoff game or two. I like that. And so I don't think that there's necessarily a formula. You don't necessarily need a great offensive line. You have to figure out how to win with what you've got. Now, you can't go out there with, a bunch of guys who don't belong in the NFL. You do
Exactly.
have to have, let's say, a C+ offensive line to be able to do something, but you don't have to have a or an A+ offensive line.
So when you're taking a shot with Chuck Klingbeil out of the Canadian Football League, and he becomes your best and most effective offensive lineman, you probably suck at the O line, and you're going to get Marino killed. So.
Yeah, probably. Probably. Odds are yes. Yes, that's a safe bet.
Now,
Yeah,
now, do
yeah,
you,
yeah.
do you dabble in gambling on the NFL, or are you forbidden because of your position there?
No, I'm just not a good gambler. And I've told people this for years that like I suck at gambling, and so you know what,
Well, so do
and
I, but it doesn't stop me. That's the problem.
that's right, exactly.
It's
And
horses and
so
divorces.
so here's the big gambler that I am. These were the only NFL bets I made all season. I put $40 on the AFC Championship games,
Okay,
and I put $30 on the Super Bowl. I think I ended up losing 10 on the AFC Championship games and all 30 on the Super Bowl.
30.
I bet small amounts because I'm giving the totals. But so and people are very unimpressed by my totals. They're screw you, Perk. You don't even gamble right. Dude, I'm sorry. I have no interest in losing money that way. I'd rather do it to chemicals and
Yes,
alcohol and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
the important things in life.
right. I get
Well, I
entertained in
don't know
other
that you
ways.
can replace the anxiety that comes along with gambling, and certainly if you're watching a game and you have even $5 on it, I believe it greatly enhances everything about that ball game. It magnifies everything to
Right.
levels you can't even imagine.
See,
Uh,
that's the exact reason that I don't gamble because right, it makes it matter. I just want to watch the Super Bowl. I found myself caring, and then it's like I had the Chiefs to score first, and then when they don't, now I'm pissed off, and I'm like, damn it, and I was looking at that. Why didn't I do that? Now it ruins the whole experience.
I bring this up for a reason. I mean, sort of a reason. Do you think there'll be a big scandal somewhere in the National Football League down the road? We've seen it on the fringes. We've seen players betting from the locker room or whatever, or the facility, and they get banned for like 2 years or whatever. Um, and we've seen officials now sort of
Hundred
sweep
percent.
taint, where I guess it's in a couple of sports, right? Where
Yep.
supposedly
Yep.
officials were letting other people use their betting account.
Yeah.
Now, this is something this stuck with me. I don't know. You've been a reporter for a long time and had a zillion conversations with different people. I'll never forget this. I was just getting going into business, and I was interviewing the general manager of the California Angels at the time, Harry Dalton, who had been very successful with the Baltimore Orioles, and he was one of those old salty dog guys, So I'm talking to him, and it was a written piece, so it wasn't like I'm sticking a mic in his face, and. Something that he said stuck with me to this day. He said people have to believe that the game is on the level. This was long before. I mean, we're talking 50 years ago, Chris.
Yeah.
Uh, and he's saying that they have to believe the game is on a level. And now I don't know. Do you find in your travels and talking to different people, are there concerns that this overwhelming embracing of what was formerly taboo, not even that long ago, right? Jimmy the Greek had to hide under the table as he said, "I like the Chiefs."
Yeah.
Uh, do you think that that's going to become something that comes into focus anytime soon, where there's some kind of major scandal? I mean, what is the NFL facing in that regard?
Oh yeah, of course there's going to be a scandal. I mean, we've seen it in baseball, we've seen it in NBA. It's going to happen. Definitely going to happen. We're seeing it more and more in college sports. But I don't think you're going to. I don't. It's not going to be on the level of the officials fixing games so the Kansas City Chiefs can win. It's
Although people
always
think
going to
that.
be on players fixing prop bets. It's too
Okay.
hard to control winning and losing. But a prop bet the under on me. I fake an injury. Terry Porter, Rozier, right? I mean,
Jonte
Jonte
Porter.
Porter.
Yeah.
You're that's the scandal. That's and I'm sure there's other things like that we aren't even aware of that are going on or that have gone on. It's just too easy. Or it's too tempting, I should say.
Yeah.
And if you are in bad shape with some bad people, that's kind of your last resort, right? You offer that up,
Yeah.
and
You
and
think
see
Pete Rose was
see if you can make some people some money or see if you can get out of jail, so to speak. So yeah, it's definitely going to hit the NFL. And look, there's a lot of times that I research stories in the locker room and they don't pan out. One of them was to players, how much do you hear from gamblers nowadays, and
wow.
how pissed off are they at you? And one player that I talked to, and the story didn't really pan out because enough players hadn't heard, but they're aware, and it happens. One player said that he had a guy put a prop bet on him to score. I don't know if I can't remember. I think it was score first in the game, and
Okay.
it happened, and the guy won $32,000. And the player says every year on the anniversary, he sends me a tweet, a thank you tweet,
Nice.
because so players are aware of what's going on. Tyreek Hill is commenting about it. That fans make comments to them about the gambling and everything like that. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, Defo, and you tell me what you think about this as an old school, media member. I think more and more fans who grow up gambling and playing fantasy sports, their allegiance is going to be to the player and to themselves as opposed to the team. So the number of Yankees fans and Dolphins fans will go down a little bit, maybe 15-20%, as I think people will view the game differently when you grow up in such a prevalent gambling fantasy football atmosphere. Do you think that's true, or do you think
I'm
this is the
100%.
old man sitting on the lawn
No,
and
no.
yelling at clouds?
No more of the old geezer. Meet me in the graveyard on Monday. Excuse me. Everybody's betting on apps, and
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like the geezers at Caesars myself when I'm on gambling shows trying to pick a side, and agonizing for 2 weeks over whether Philadelphia is going to win or is it going to be the Chiefs laying one on a hook. And nobody cares about the fucking result anymore. It's amazing. I mean,
right,
they're all
right,
just like, hey, did some backup running back end up getting one carry for 4.5 yards? Because if he
right.
did, winner.
Yeah,
And actually, it took a blowout game. I mean, think about it. Here's a game that otherwise was of little interest from a competitive standpoint, except that many things changed and transpired that were receiving major portions of monetary action, including over under total
yep.
changed dramatically. Mahomes, there was one bet I was looking at, I almost made, and I was going to take on a long shot that you would have Hurts have more passing yards than Mahomes in the game. Seemed inconceivable, didn't it? But
Oh,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
watched the way that Hurts was throwing the ball in a previous game against the Commanders. He was razor sharp, even though he doesn't throw the prettiest ball. It's not like you're watching Vinny Testaverde drop back and fling one. I mean, he's okay. He's that type of quarterback. He would be what the poor man's Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, as we talked about,
Yep.
and yet he was demonstrating not only the ability to pinpoint the ball downfield, but he was getting great results on his receivers, AJ Brown and Smith were wrestling balls away from guys, and they did it in the Super Bowl. But
Yeah.
in garbage time, Mahomes eclipsed him. So, but I mean, it was a fascinating aspect of the game, including Mahomes. Achieved I think an over total when he threw that bomb to Xavier Worthy, who
Yeah.
also was a highly active element in prop bets in that ball game. So, yeah, people didn't give a shit that it was a blowout. I mean, the Flowers weren't in the punch there at halftime for a lot of people because they still had major action going on other things. And you're absolutely right. I don't think people will care nearly as much about teams as they do about individuals
Yeah.
and finding guys that they can roll with. All right. One last thing, and appreciate your time. I'm glad a sledgehammer didn't come breaking through the wall there as they finish.
The bear wall, yeah.
Yeah, but all right. So I was envisioning how much money did the NFL make this year? What do you think? Can anybody quantify this?
Well, I would think, yeah, I would say that they're going to approach record totals. I think the game is as healthy as it's ever been.
What a
The
giant
the
cash!
media contracts are as healthy as they've ever been. You've got some youth in the game. You haven't had any big scandals since COVID, which, well, that wasn't even a scandal. But I think the league is in a really, really good spot. So yeah, I would expect, and oh well, and look, here's a signal of growth. They keep making these ridiculous deals that we all hate with Netflix and the Weather Channel. Who
Yep,
knows
there you
who's gonna what we're gonna have to subscribe to watch the next set of NFL games? But they keep selling their product. They're gonna play 18 games. They're going to Madrid, so I would expect that they're gonna have damn near record profits, Defo. I don't think that league's going anywhere anytime soon.
Goodell looked very comfortable throughout the season, did he not? I mean,
Oh yeah,
he's
yeah.
got his arm
And,
around Snoop Dogg for God's sake, and
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
you know what? And I'll say this. I will say this. I don't think Goodell and that league are ever comfortable. They're like sharks that like
well,
they
there you
they
go.
will die if they stop moving. If they stand, and that league knows how to make money. I mean the freaking 18th game depot. That's just more money for them. They'll throw a portion of it to the players. But the real key here would be if they would expand the roster so that player health really would be a priority. But they're not going to do that because
No,
that's more money out of their pocket. That's a higher payroll.
sure.
Everybody has to suck it up. Here's another 50,000 a year. Suck it up, and you're going to give us another game whether you like it or not. And these guys know how to make money, dude. They're always moving forward.
No, it's amazing. I was thinking about just money falling from the sky, and I had that question in mind. How much fucking money did they make this year? It had to be enormous. I mean, they really do it well. Chris, Dynamite, the Sun Sentinel, of course, you can find your columns. Where do we find your podcasting and all the other stuff you do?
Everything on sunsentinel.com. You can see Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk, the podcast, and you can read my column. It will cost you, I'll be honest, but it's worth it. We like to
Yeah,
think that it's worth it. And, for me to continue getting renovations in this place, put a painting on this wall behind me, get a subscription. Help me out.
yeah. Well, I mean, and you got the Dolphin brass looking around and going, "Yeah, is Perkins here? Oh, shit,
That's right.
don't say anything, nothing." We appreciate you
Exactly.
very much, Chris. Sorry for the coughing fits. Just this head
Hey,
cold kicked in, and all of a sudden, I was toast. But I appreciate all of your candid thoughts. A great summation of what transpired in 2024 and looking ahead to 2025. Of course, always cogent analysis, greatly insightful on the Dolphins. You're not one of those guys that has to cave into any form of homerism, and yet you're not antagonistic. Like our buddy Mike Mayo, he lost his perspective because Jolie yelled at him today, and he crumbled under the pressure.
Mayo is
And
Mayo stirs it up. He loves to stir it up with that
spewing
Dolphins
venom
team.
ever since, right?
Yep.
It's doing
Oh
all right.
man.
But
Yeah.
you correctly predicted. I thought they were going to be better this year. You said they were probably looking at 9-8 again. I thought you got to be out of your mind, man.
Yeah.
And 8-9 ended up being the final mark, which is a travesty. I'm with you 1,000% on that.
Yeah.
For where they were at talent wise and financially. Chris, a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much. I hope they didn't destroy your house while you were, not watching. And we'll talk to you again real soon. I hope, my
All
friend.
right, Dave. Anytime, man. Talk to
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much, Chris Perkins, ladies and gentlemen, here on Conversations. And I apologize, guys. It was a little bit of a struggle here today, but we managed to get through it. And Toby, we thank you and all of the hard work that you do. Did you see how hard he was working behind the scenes, Chris?
Oh yeah, no, that's just that's pure dedication. You like this is why you lift all them weights, right? To do the Super Bowl show.
That's it. He's outside having a smoke. Next thing you know, oh, those guys are still talking. Holy shit!
That's right.
All right, thanks, Chris. We love you,
All
man,
right,
and
Steve. See you.
we'll see you soon. Toby, thank you so much for putting this together. We ran a little bit over the time there. Got started a little late. So we thank you guys for tuning in. You can catch us in the morning, 8 to 9. Luby and I now are all over the Bleacher Brothers website and network and having a lot of fun bringing you some morning perspectives on the brilliant world of sports. Toby, when can we catch you again? Coming up with the baseball insider that you do.
I'll be on tomorrow night, Defo. So I'll be on tomorrow night for some MLB and college talk, and we're doing FAU baseball talk on Thursday afternoon.
Beautiful, man. You do a great job. So thanks so much for all your help, and we'll see you next time. People, thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Conversations.